September 28, 2008, a rocket the size of a telephone pole is sitting on a launch pad in the Marshall Islands. It's built from spare parts, assembled in 6 weeks, and it is quite literally the last money the company has. If this thing doesn't reach orbit, there is no fifth attempt. There's no SpaceX. 3 rockets before this one already failed 3 different ways. The 4th one is about to either make Elon Musk's company history or end it. Here's the problem Elon actually saw before any of the rocket stuff. Getting something to orbit was absurdly expensive. A single medium launch to geostationary orbit ran $150 million to $250 million. And Elon's actual goal wasn't build rockets, it was Mars. Specifically, he wanted to send a greenhouse to Mars, partially to reignite public excitement about space exploration, but at those launch prices, that wasn't an engineering problem. It was a budget problem nobody was going to solve. So in 2008, Elon tried to just buy his way around it. He flew to Moscow to negotiate for a refurbished Russian ICBM, a Dnipro rocket, to launch that Mars greenhouse. The Russian quoted him around $8 million per missile, and from what he could tell, the price kept climbing the longer he sat in the room. The deal fell apart, and on the flight home, he made that call that created the company. If nobody would sell him a rocket at a price that made sense, he'd build one himself. Now, here's the part that's easy to skip past. Elon could make that call because he had just walked away from PayPal with roughly $180 million when eBay bought it. He put $100 million of that straight into SpaceX. That's unfair advantage, not technical genius, not connections in the aerospace industry, capital, and total control over how it got spent with no investors he had to convince first. He still needed people who actually knew how to build the thing. Tom Mueller, a propulsion engineer who built the largest privately made rocket engine in his own garage, became employee number 1. Wayne Shotwell came on a few months later to run sales and would eventually run the entire company day to day. What followed was 3 straight orbital failures, 2006, 2007, twice in 2008, each one for a different specific reason. By the 3rd failure, the SpaceX money was almost gone, and Tesla, Elon's other company, were circling bankruptcy at the exact same time. He said publicly that during this stretch, he was waking up from nightmares, screaming in physical pain. That's the position he's in when we pick back up at the top of this video. So what did Elon's team actually build mechanically? Falcon 1 and later Falcon 9 are 2-stage rockets burning a fairly conventional fuel combination, refined kerosene and liquid oxygen. Nothing exotic there. The first stage does the heavy lifting off the pad, burns through most of its fuel, separates from the second stage, and the second stage carries the payload the rest of the way to orbit. Here's the part that actually changed the economics of the entire industry. For 60 years, the piece of hardware either burned up on re-entry or parachuted into the ocean, useless after a single flight. Since December 2015, SpaceX has been flying it back. After staging, the first stage starts falling back through the atmosphere. Small, cold gas thrusters near the top flip it right side up. The main engine fires briefly to slow the fall. Landing legs deploy. Then, in the final seconds, 3 of its 9 engines fire one more time for what's called the boost back burn, bringing the whole stage down to a soft, vertical landing. The same kind of landing you'd associate with science fiction, not a company that didn't exist 15 years earlier. That landing capability is the whole business model. If you can refly the most expensive part of the rocket instead of throwing it away every time, your cost per launch drops in a way that's structurally impossible for a competitor still building a one-and-done hardware. So, who actually paid for any of this in the beginning? Not commercial customers, the government. The first 2 Falcon 1 launches were bought by the US Department of Defense through a DARPA program evaluating new launch vehicles. That government relationship deepens in 2008 with the NASA cargo contract. More on that in a minute. And it's the financial backbone of the company for years. There's also a quieter decision buried in how SpaceX is structured, and it matters as much as the reusable booster does. SpaceX builds the overwhelming majority of its components in-house: engines, avionics, fuel tanks, rather than handing out that to hundreds of subcontractors the way Boeing Lockheed joint venture ULA does. One aerospace executive put it simply, SpaceX can understand every piece of its own rocket in details because it actually built most of those pieces itself. That's not just a manufacturing preference. It's why SpaceX can iterate on its own hardware fast and reportedly fly a reused booster at a fraction of what it charges customers for the launch. And then there's the part of business almost nobody predicting 20 years ago, Starlink, a satellite internet service. Pay for a terminal, pay a monthly subscription, that by 2025 had grown into the majority of SpaceX's revenue, $11.4 billion in 2025, 61% of the company's total revenue, and the single biggest profit center in the entire business. The rocket company makes most of its money on the internet subscription now. Here's the decision that actually set up everything that followed, and it's not the dramatic one. In 2004, NASA handed a cargo contract to a company called Kessler Aerospace without putting it up for a competitive bid. SpaceX had 0 successful orbital launches at this point, 0. But Elon believed his company could compete for that contract on merit, and he was furious it never got the chance. So SpaceX filed a formal protest with the Government Accountability Office. Think about what that actually meant in the moment. Elon is picking a fight with NASA, the one agency his entire company would depend on for the next 20 years, over a contract his company hadn't even been allowed to bid on. He had no way of knowing whether the protest would blow up the relationship before it even started, or open a door. There was an easier road available. SpaceX could have just absorbed it, kept its head down, kept bidding piecemeal Defense Department launch contracts on Falcon 1's reputation alone, and tried to grow organically without ever picking a fight with its biggest potential customer. Given what happens next with Falcon 1, 3 straight failures and a cash crunch that nearly kills the company, that quieter path possibly ends with SpaceX running out of money before it even gets the chance to build Falcon 9 at all. Instead, NASA pulled the Kessler contract and created an entirely new program, Commercial Orbital Transportation Services, or COTS. Open, competitive bidding structured around milestone payments instead of the traditional cost-plus model. SpaceX won it in 2006, $278 million initially, growing to $396 million. That contract became the financial bridge that funds Falcon 9 and the Dragon capsule. Without it, there's a real argument that Falcon 9 and the reusable booster capability that built the entire modern commercial space industry never gets built on the timeline that it did. The competing company in the same bidding process, rocket plane Kessler, missed its milestone and lost its contract in 2007. NASA terminated it and SpaceX absorbed the momentum. So, the fourth Falcon 1 launch, the dramatic, last money, do or die moment from the top of this video, mattered enormously to SpaceX's survival in that specific moment. But the COTS contract had already been secured 2 years earlier, before Falcon 1 ever reached orbit. The financial bridge was arguably already built. The fourth launch decided whether SpaceX would still be around to use it. So why did this work? 2 things stacked on top of each other. First, Elon had enough of his own capital and total control over it to survive 3 consecutive failures that would have ended almost any externally funded startup the moment investors lost patience. Second, and less obviously, SpaceX picked a fight it could afford to lose, the GAO protest, years before it had to make a bet it couldn't afford to lose, the fourth Falcon 1 launch. That ordering matters. The low-cost, high-upside bet came first and built the financial cushion that made the desperate, all-or-nothing bet survivable when it eventually came. Some would argue the more replicable lesson is perseverance wins. Plenty of founders persevere through failure and the money still runs out. The argument worth sitting with is this: the COTS contract win is arguably more important to SpaceX's survival than the fourth launch succeeding. And it's the less cinematic story, which is probably why it gets told less. It's also worth being honest about what the story leaves out. A peer-reviewed academic critique has argued that the scrappy startup narrative underplays how much SpaceX's survival depended on public money and favorable government decision, not pure grit. That's a fair challenge to sit with, even if you don't fully agree with it. Here are 2 takeaways if you're building something right now. 1. Look for asymmetric, low-cost bets against entrenched incumbents before you're forced into the bet the company moment. Don't wait until you're out of runway to start taking risk. 2. The dramatic near-death moment in your story is probably not the moment that actually saved you. It's usually the quieter, earlier decision nobody was filming. If you're sitting on a version of that GAO protest right now, some low-cost, asymmetric fight you've been avoiding because it feels too early or too small to matter, that might be the decision actually worth making this week, not the big scary one you keep putting off. If you want more of these, the actual decision behind companies that made it, not just the highlight reel, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment if there is a company that you want me to cover, and I'll see you in the next one.